Much has been made of a couple different things this season for the Chiefs. Number one, the injury situation starting in the very first snap of the preseason, with Hollywood Brown going down for maybe the entire year, probably the entire regular season. But number two has been the offense hasn't looked right. The Chiefs are 7-0, but the offense hasn't looked right. No one can beat the Chiefs, but the offense hasn't looked right. The Kansas City Chiefs have won 13 consecutive days going back to Christmas last year, and they will not play another game before the month of November 2024. But the offense hasn't looked right. We hear it time and again. So I wanted to, here's what had happened. I was preparing this week's rookie recap video. Every week I go through the Kansas City Chiefs rookies and one by one look at what it is that they're doing this season as a building block for the future. And I was looking at Xavier Worthy's numbers, and guys, he's getting stunningly close to Marquez Valdes-Scantling's total season output for 2023. And I started to wonder, yeah, the Chiefs have lost Hollywood Brown, who was kind of going to be this year's Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and they lost Rashee Rice, who was going to be this year's, Rashee Rice. But do we really think that they are that much worse off than they were last year with a rookie Rashee Rice and Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the starting lineup as well? So I put together the numbers, and I think it's going to be a little bit eye-opening. So this season, through 7 games, DeAndre Hopkins has 17 receptions, 202 yards, and a touchdown. And I know there are lots of caveats there. That's where we're going to end this video. Xavier Worthy, through 7 games, 19 receptions, 235 yards, 3 touchdowns. He has added 7 carries for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. So let's go last year. Look at what the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers were doing last year through 7 games. That would be Rashee Rice through 7 games and Marquez Valdes-Scantling through 7 games. Rashee Rice had 26 receptions for 305 yards and 3 touchdowns. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 10 receptions for 205 yards and 1 touchdown through 7 games of last season. So what can we learn from this? Well, I think we have to compare them head-to-head as a duo in order to get a better idea of just what is going on here. And you have that on your screen right now. You have, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy through 7 games combining for 43 touches, 484 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Last season, through 7 games, Rashee Rice and Marquez Valdes-Scantling had combined for 36 touches, 505 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So, through 7 games, this year's pair has 7 more touches for 21 fewer yards and 2 more touchdowns. Now, the big question arises from this: what are those yards worth? Would you rather have 7 more touches, which can extend drives, 7 more touches, which actually mean the Kansas City Chiefs retain possession of the football, 7 more touches, which means that you are reliably having your targets in possession of the ball, and 2 more touchdowns, 14 more points, 12 more points technically, but 14 more points? Or would you rather have the 21 yards? Well, this brings us to the number 2 point that I have here. DeAndre Hopkins, is coming to the Kansas City Chiefs from a far inferior offense, and his numbers reflect that. I don't see any reason to believe that the first 7 games of DeAndre Hopkins' 2024 season have anything particularly to do with the remaining 10 games. I think that his production is going to go through the roof these final 10 games because he is in a much better offense with many more targets. But that's not all. Moving on to number 3, the touchdown that MVS had scored through those first 7 games was his only touchdown for the season, meaning that these stats, 10 receptions, 200 yards, and 1 touchdown, are actually kind of inflated for MVS. He would end the season with 315 receiving yards total and 1 touchdown. Now, maybe I'm just a homer. Maybe I'm projecting in a false manner. Maybe I don't know anything at all that I'm talking about. But I would imagine that Xavier Worthy's remaining 10 games will be an upgrade over the first 7. So really what you're looking at here is, can DeAndre Hopkins be Rashee Rice from last season? Did I have that here? Can DeAndre Hopkins be as good as Rice ended last year? And how much better can Xavier Worthy be than was Marquez Valdes-Scantling last year? Looking at this, Xavier Worthy has 26 touches for 283 yards and 5 touchdowns. MVS had 10 receptions for 200 yards last season. Xavier Worthy, in my opinion, will accelerate his production from here going forward because he's becoming more involved in the offense and knows more about what it is that he's doing. In addition, DeAndre Hopkins has 7 1,000-yard seasons to his name. Remember, last year, Rashee Rice finished the season with 917 or 935 yards, something like that. He sat out the final week of the season and did not hit 1,000 yards. DeAndre Hopkins did have 1,000 yards last season, whilst catching passes from Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis, and Malik Willis, though I don't think he actually caught a pass from Malik Willis. None of those guys, needless to say, are, in fact, Patrick Mahomes. In fact, those guys are all several levels down from Patrick Mahomes. What can DeAndre Hopkins do with the best quarterback he's ever played with? In addition, when answering, so can DeAndre Hopkins match what it was that Rashee Rice did at the end of last season? Even though he's older, much older, less explosive, I believe he can because of that catching ability. I believe that he can because he's going to open Mahomes up to taking more risks. If you remember last season, even through this point, and this point was right around the jumping off point for Rashee Rice last season, but even at week 7, week 8, or game 7, game 8, Rashee Rice was doing a lot of stuff close to the line of scrimmage. High completion percentages there, not downfield. We didn't see much of that until the playoffs. So when you're asking how much better can Xavier Worthy be than Marquez Valdes-Scantling, well, he's already scored 5 times the touchdowns that Marquez Valdes-Scantling had last season. In fact, Worthy is 33 yards short of Marquez Valdes-Scantling's entire season production in 2023. I imagine he's going to get 33 yards this coming week. He seems to be pretty good for at least that much. If he is able to eclipse Marquez Valdes-Scantling's entire 2023 output by the 8th game of the season, I think completely and unequivocally the answer of whether or not this tandem can be as good or better than was Rashee Rice as a rookie and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that answer is yes. So, between Rice and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, there were a total of 8 touchdowns on the season last year. Xavier Worthy has 5 right now. It would be no shock. It would be no shock for Xavier Worthy to match the total touchdown production of both of last year's starting wide receivers by week 10. It would be no surprise to see that. So, the big question at the end of the day, can these Kansas City Chiefs three-peat? Last year, I would argue that they repeated with a pair of wide receivers that was worse, Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Rashee Rice, than this year's starting tandem of DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy. So yes, they can. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.